All right, welcome back to the conversation here as we dive deep into all of it. My next guest, Dr. Peter McCullough, the Chief Scientific Officer at the Wellness Company. You can always find out more at twc.health/Gruber. Doctor, good to have you back on the program.
Thank you.
I keep seeing more. You and I have talked about this in the past, but this is becoming more and more at the forefront, and that is peer-reviewed studies and doctors like yourself saying, look, we knew the vaccines were uncharted territory. It became evident that they were dangerous. Now there are calls to ban these COVID-19 vaccines all over the world right now. Tell us what the latest is, if you would, please.
In a comprehensive paper with nearly 300 references, former NIH researcher Nathaniel Meadus, first author, I'm senior author, we review all the evidence from the original clinical trials presented at the FDA at December 10th, 2020 by Pfizer, all the way through all the outcomes data. And the end analysis, Steve, is that the risks far outweigh the benefit. In fact, the risks of death, people dying very early after taking these shots, is simply not worth it. We've called for the vaccines to be removed off the market. This joins calls from the World Council for Health, the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, several other papers from Australia, and then my personal calls in testimony in the U.S. Senate and Congress.
How can these governments, and we're seeing this, it's the return to the fear factor, if you will, the fear mongering, and pushing people, hey, get your flu vaccine, your vaccine for this, this, and this, and don't forget to get your COVID vaccine. They're still pushing this. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, pushing this hard in the last few weeks again. How could anybody in good conscience still be doing that?
I saw this. It's as if the COVID-19 vaccine is just being bundled in with influenza, RSV. Now there are Pfizer commercials for a pneumococcal vaccine. You've probably heard them on the radio and TV. And this interaction with Rishi Sunak, who, in Parliament, declared the vaccines were safe and effective, again, with no contemporary review of the data. He was challenged by a vaccine victim in a town hall, a man with myocarditis after the vaccine, Steve. It was really a tense interaction. And Sunak can't say he doesn't know because he's heard it firsthand and it's recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't say he doesn't know. And I saw that interaction. Tense is there's another gentleman there who also had injury from the vaccines. Here's something, I was just traveling, and something that came up with my wife and I talking. She said, when did we have a vaccine for everything? Everything. HPV and all these other things that you mentioned, and RSV and all these. There's a vaccine for everything now. And it just it doesn't sit well with me. Am I wrong to be skeptical?
We should be skeptical. There's one NGO that has an aspiration of 500 vaccines per person. Can you imagine if you're in the vaccine business? That means every human being is a customer. The sales are astronomical. The vaccine business is driving tremendous interest and employment because the companies are making so much money.
But what is your recommendation? Okay, so 500 vaccines. I mean, that's mind-blowing. But yeah, Pfizer created how many billionaires were freshly minted during the pandemic as they were rolling out hundreds of millions of these injections worldwide. What is your advice? Professionally speaking, of all these new vaccines, I mean, how do you approach these? Are there any that you say are okay, or are you just skeptical across the board, sir?
Well, we look at them one by one. We do know that all the vaccines are covered under the Vaccine Injury Compensation Act of 1986. So they have full liability protection. So if you get a side effect from any vaccine, you're pretty much on your own or have to apply through this government program. Steve, I think the approach as a doctor, and I've personally accepted all the vaccines, so did my family members. We didn't take the COVID vaccines. But I can tell you, I think that going forward, there's so many of them, is risk stratification. Vaccines for the people who really need them. If there's a child with congenital lung disease or cystic fibrosis, they may need the full gamut of the vaccines that cover pulmonary infections. An adult with emphysema on oxygen, an influenza, RSV, pneumococcal vaccine set could make sense. But I think it's going to be who needs it as opposed to every person taking it as a blanket rule.
Yeah, that's the concern I would have, is everybody getting, lined up and shots in arms. My concern, very, very basically, is what about interactions between vaccines? If you have 2 or 3 or 10 or 500, as you put it, my Lord, at some point there's an interaction there that's unforeseen because they didn't have a chance to test it out anyhow. I feel like it's about money and not about good health. That's my perspective on a lot of it. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. In fact, the companies never test for an interaction because many times they're competing companies. They wouldn't test with the other companies, for instance, on what happens when you give 2 or 3 together. The concern is this, Steve. The immune system gets hyperstimulated by multiple vaccines at once. Many of these factors called cytokines, they go into the brain. So the concern is in a child, a febrile seizure, development of a neuropsychiatric syndrome. In adults, Guillain-Barré syndrome, a variety of autoimmune issues. So, I think in many ways, less is more, and vaccines that are prudent, reasonable for people who really need them, not everybody, and certainly not many given all at once.
Yeah, Dr. Peter McCullough here with us from the Wellness Company. By the way, the Wellness Company offers a spike protein treatment, if you will, that's available to the company. They also have this great emergency kit in case you have a pandemic you're facing. TWC.health/Gruber. You get all sorts of life-saving medicines. Ivermectin, you get antibiotics, antiparasitics, antivirals in there. TWC.health/Gruber. You can find out more about this package. Sir, how important is it to make sure you're prepared before the next disease comes rolling down the hill, whatever it might be?
It's critical to every household. We saw this with COVID, where the clinics and pharmacies shut down. They wouldn't fill prescriptions. People need to be prepared. And at the Wellness Company, we've thought through all the different scenarios of, another version of COVID, the Chinese pneumonia, anthrax, the medical emergency kit. That's the aqua blue kits. That's the broadest kit. I think every family ought to have one of these. Now, it's 1 kit per person, but we ought to be prepared, and people can quickly move. Treatment early on any one of these next threats is key.
Dr. Peter McCullough, the kit, looks just like this. TWC.health/Gruber, TWC.health/Gruber. Get it today. Doctor, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Peter McCullough, always a pleasure and an honor to have him on the program. You know, he was out there on the front lines during the pandemic saying, wait a second, these vaccines, so-called, not what they appear to be, not what they're being presented as, not tested, and in the end, dangerous to so many people, as we know. I don't talk about The View now or ever, but here we go. View host Sunny Hostin, she's one of these, babbling talking heads on The View. Black lady, often makes disparaging comments about race and so forth and reparations, these sorts of things. Well, she's been told now her ancestors were slave owners. Uh-oh. That's a problem, yeah. Her ancestors were slave owners. That'll get your attention, won't it? Yeah, apparently. She still says that reparations are important. So if her parents were or ancestors were slave owners, does she pay reparations or receive reparations? I get so confused about the modern, thing. Thought I'd ask. One more thing before we go. Hey, don't forget to take your vitamins. Healthy Cell American-made vitamins are an incredible part of that. It's good for my health. Ivy's too, as we travel across the country here the last few days. No matter what you're looking for, American-made vitamins are a key, not Chinese-made junk. Focus and Recall, designed to keep your mind sharp. The Immune Boost, keep you in top shape to battle cold and flu season. A bioactive multivitamin to keep you going in your active life. There's a heart and vascular formula, even something to keep you chilled out called Calm Mood. That's right, keeps me calm. Not really. I don't take it. I feel like I'm calm enough. Take a look right now at HealthyCell.com. Find the right formula for your life. Check out HealthyCell.com. Save 20% using the promo code Gruber. HealthyCell.com. That's right. You'll feel better about it. When we come up, explicit material, pornographic material to kids under 10. We're going to talk about that with Curtis Hill. He's running for Indiana's 43rd Attorney General. Actually, he's running for governor. He is the Attorney General of Indiana. He's running for governor of the great state of Indiana. He's coming up next, right here on the Steve Gruber Show. You don't want to miss it.